Anna describes herself as a business analyst at heart, passionate about business analysis. She's currently in the role of product management and product centricity catalyst, so is well placed to tell us more about these topics. So, with a presentation entitled "So Are You a Product Thinker?" Anna, over to you.
Thank you, Adrian, and hi everybody. I'm really happy to be able to meet so many great folks and hopefully future product thinkers. Perfect. So thank you really for joining the session. I hope you're going to find it really helpful and inspiring today. Maybe just a bit intro about myself. So I've been a BA for over 10 years now, 5 years at Roche, and I dedicated the last 2 years spreading product thinking in my organization. Initially, it was in my project, then a bit further on a local site level, and then throughout some larger global IT transformation, where I contributed to the design of product management practice. I was also responsible for onboarding over 400 product managers into their roles. And I developed a passion about product thinking. I definitely believe that building product culture is something that is really required nowadays. I think it adds value to how we do things, to what we achieve for our organizations. And I'd like to share it with you, my fellow BAs, because business analysis and product management are quite complementary disciplines, and they can both benefit from each other. So today is going to be about sharing this passion. I hope to inspire you, and I hope that you can learn that this has started from an authentic, difficult experience that I had, and maybe you will find it relatable. And I want to tell you some pragmatic aspects of product thinking. I want to explain what product is and what it isn't. And I want to tell you also about some practical concepts and techniques that you can incorporate in your day-to-day business analysis practice. Because in general, if you ask why exactly this could be of any value to you, well, since BAs help organizations to adopt changes, to bring changes, and not only just because Babok said so, this is something what we do on a daily basis. And our profession also needs to change. It also needs to mature in some aspects, and we should be looking for insights from the market, from the changes that we can also observe around how our enterprise organizes itself around products, etc. This can really help us to evolve and elevate our BA craft and BA leadership. So I hope it's going to be something that also you can add to your toolkit. And before we dive into it, just a brief background of my organization. So I work at a healthcare company, Roche. In Roche Informatics, we focus on delivering solutions that evolve the practice of medicine and help patients live longer, better lives. And the next slide that you will see only displays one statement. It's our mission statement, which is, believe me, it's not just an element of branding. It's doing now what patients need next. And if you think about it, to me, it really does give a sense of purpose, because I know that all my actions, they contribute to better patients' journey. And with this in mind, I hope I can inspire you today with a similar statement, because product thinking is doing now what your business and your customers need next. But what matters is not only that the need is satisfied, but also how quickly it is satisfied. So let's look at 4 stages of how quickly we can respond to the needs. The first stage is something that you would definitely recollect as a demand-based model. It's the oldest one, really. It's the least effective, unfortunately, too. The second stage is when you recognize the need independently of the demand, but the response is still delayed. The third one is much more proactive, and it does shorten the time to value. But really, the most desirable one is where you can deliver value before it is expected. So what's the secret ingredient here and what does Agile have to do with it? So this is where I wanted to tell you a little bit of a story. Imagine that you're about to start a new project, a new initiative. Can you recall that feeling? You're excited, you're hoping to do great things. There's this energy in the air, and you're ready for the challenges as a BA. But it's not like you're about to launch to go to the moon and back. You know that there are some real problems on the business side to be solved, and you're going to help to the best of your ability with systematic analytical approach. Besides, you're not alone in there. You're part of an agile team. You have all the people, all the competencies, and everybody wants to succeed just as you. And of course, you seem to have all the muscles you need. So what can possibly go wrong in that scenario? Well, this was my project some time ago. And few, let's say, months later, the things that I was hearing or seeing were not exactly what I was hoping for. Somebody was asking about a release schedule, about new functionalities in scope. Daily stand-up was nothing but a status update. Not a single sprint got completed within the time box. We could really forget about releasing small portions of the product frequently. We could forget about checking with the users on the working increment because there was no working product increment to check. And the team wasn't actively participating in the discovery anymore. They expected ready requirements, ready stories, backlog that was always there for them to act on. They only expected assigned tasks. And they didn't recognize how many things have changed from day one. They didn't follow anymore. So that was my challenge. And I'm sure that many of you have been in that situation too. And those anti-patterns, they made me realize that the team was in some sort of a bubble. And this is what happens when delivery takes over, when it becomes the routine of the team, because the team ends with feature factory. They keep developing things, which, by the way, always gives them a sense of completion and, of course, reasons for celebrations. But most of the items they produce, they're so far away from the reality of the customers. So why celebrate? This is a waste because it's doing now what nobody will need next. So I had to stay in front of my whiteboard and think about the reasons, because failing to adopt agile ways of working was one side of a problem, but the organization, they should have had some mechanisms in place to prevent it, like giving the team the right incentives, not measuring the team against how many epics or features they deliver. It was, as a team, we may have failed Agile, but also I feel like Agile failed us because it gave us the wrong idea, especially since we were not a very mature team at that point of time. Because the idea was that doing things incrementally and iteratively would do the job. But it doesn't really mean anything if we don't ensure that the product is adopted on a regular basis. Because what we really need is to hear from the actual people who can say about the product that, yes, this is something that makes my life easier and I need this particular thing now. And only if you hear such a reaction multiplied by many times, this can only bring an actual real impact. And while Agile has provided some strategies, some concepts to handle the complexity and challenges of the IT world, I don't believe it's sufficient anymore. And of course, just for clarification, I've always been a supporter of Agile. But if our aim is impactful change, if we think about making more impact, making bigger impact, it's crucial for us that we realize those behaviors that kill the impact. Because now in the era of feature factories, it should be left behind. It's something that we should just find as a post-agile era, because Agile is not really about delivery only. And we must shift away from this kind of sole focus on delivery. It's time to break free from harmful and very expensive patterns, because now it's time to elevate the agile mindset to a new level. So I'm saying product thinking is the new agile. I'm saying that because I believe it's another level of the agile mindset. I think it's just like a more mature approach, the one that doesn't really stick to delivery aspects. And I want to share three pillars or three concepts that I find the most important around product thinking. So first, it starts with customer obsession. It goes around placing the consumer of the product at the forefront all the time. And you're really holding to it when you know them so well that you can anticipate the next thing that they will need before they will realize it. And this is extremely important if you want to respond to the need quickly and shorten time to value, which is the next focus area. Elimination of waste. It might seem that it is connected to the delivery aspect, but it's really not just that. It's far broader. It is related to how we define products, what assumptions we make about them, about our work, about our plans. In fact, it's also about how we prioritize and execute our plans. So I'm going to just say something that also stays as a very ground rule about products. They're not supposed to be universal. They are contextual, and they enable two things. So one is the tangible behavior change of people, of the actual human beings. And the other is that those human beings, those customers, they exist and operate in a certain business context. So there are three connected elements here. Product that enables customer behavior change, and only that brings the business impact. So product thinking is like a journey from the problem space of the customers through the right solution into the business impact. And the goal of this journey is to reduce the gap between customers and the business. And in this sense, understanding how to shape customer behavior is a key to achieving this business impact. And this is where we typically also compare the different approach, the product versus project battle. Well, it's not exactly a battle. It's more like a more emergent approach to value, which product thinking is. It's something that, rather assuming that some group of wise people can somehow, intuit the maximum value that can organization provide, it's more like we're trying to find out the different views on what exactly the product is in this area. So we don't know anything for sure. We're rather learning it. We're discovering it. We're exploring various options based on understanding of our customers, adapting to their needs, learning about their needs, and also spending much more time in the domain of the problem instead of domain of the solution. So like I said before, product is not supposed to be universal, but the other, let's say, rule about it is that product is no longer just a technology. It's not a result of software development anymore, because product is more like an entity or a vehicle that delivers value for someone. And as I hope the picture suggests, it's like a well-structured ecosystem where the value can flow. And it's built of components of both IT and non-IT nature. So the product stack is anything that is needed to make the product consumable. And speaking of consumption, I hope that most of you are already after dinner. I want you to take a look at a restaurant example. So the product here is not only the cuisine type, it's not the combination of starters, of main courses, desserts listed in the menu. The product here is a capability, which we can name having a meal. So where can we, VAs, where can we maximize the value for the customer here? Probably the first thing that comes to mind, you're looking to understand what are the product attributes that you can optimize. So in our case, what are the factors of quality, of taste, So maybe you can have the best suppliers and hire a great chef in response to that. But there are other things that matter here as well. So let me ask you this. Do you think that the customer experience would be better if he sat on a comfortable chair in an eye-appealing space where he could hear some gentle music in the background, but still not so loud, so he can have a conversation? What about things like the way staff responds to customer needs, like when somebody takes care of the customer, when he asks for a napkin or a salt, or maybe reports that there is an issue with the food, that is cold or something. So there are other things as well, like what about the restaurant's policy around including mandatory tips in the bill? Or what about payment methods available? Right? So all this really together, this is what we put together to understand what the product is. And this is where we are talking about product decomposition. That should be something that is put more attention to. This is the ability to decouple the product into two layers. So the product offering and product stack. We're looking here to define what is the optimal combination of those elements that make up the product. So we're talking here about product scoping, which is absolutely essential for understanding as well as requirement scoping. So this is a new way that you can try to define everything that you need to deliver great customer experience. And defining this offering helps to determine what capabilities it requires. So what organizational attributes support the business, and they are explained from a customer perspective, like in a natural customer language. Components are items from the recipe, we can call it that. So those are ingredients, those are cooking appliances and services that deliver that need to be all together to deliver a product value. So that will be like an all-encompassing view of the building blocks, the capabilities, the processes, the services, and technology. So all this combined, that's what determines the product scope. And how does that help a business analyst? So I added here some red ovals as representation of requirements of various types and size. So think about it, how it can help you with the requirements traceability and impact analysis. This is like a big picture view, right? So it allows you to determine what is the requirement dependency and connection to the whole ecosystem. So some of them would be related more to the organizational capabilities, and some of them more to the functionality types and different aspects of the system, et cetera, et cetera. So you can definitely build a much better horizontal view of the requirements dependencies here as well. And here, I would just like to emphasize that system thinking is one of the things that helps to better understand this end-to-end experience of the customer, because this is something that maybe is not visible right away. This is something that we need to connect between the understanding of the business needs versus customer needs. And there is a very beautiful tool that can help us draw this. And I wanted to encourage you to take a look at Wordly mapping. This is a tool that is like a map of a product. So it shows capabilities and components that are necessary to fulfill the needs of the customers, and they are arranged in a certain way. So they're arranged according to their dependency relationships. But the way we place them at the map, it depends on whether they are things that the customer can see or observe or touch or experience or interact with. So everything that impacts this customer, in a way, the y-axis depicts a value chain, and the higher on the y-axis, the closer to the customer, the more visible. So this view helps to see which elements we can improve or add in order to increase customer value. At the same time, it shows the ecosystem because it shows the network of components that we need to have. And it brings insights as to which capabilities or components we can or should evolve. And if you look below the line, the horizontal axis, it represents the stages of maturity. So the idea is, so that's a hint from a BA side. The idea is to move things from the left to the right. But the challenge is to understand which elements can be moved and what makes sense, right? This is where we are looking into more strategic analysis of the organization, of the product setup, etc. This is how we can support roles around product management to make better decisions in terms of their strategies. So we know that those value bonds are between the business perspective and the customer perspective. And this particular view, it helps to anticipate changes and maybe identify some areas where we can innovate, where we can maybe improve the quality or efficiency. Maybe we can outsource certain things in order to gain competitive advantage, right? So it's a very powerful tool, very simple though, in order to paint a big picture and also suggest certain strategies. So just a hint to look into the page. There are lots of materials from Simon Wardley, and definitely something that helps the BA. It's more like an architectural tool, but I already applied it in my analysis, and I find it really, really helpful. And you could see that the other example is actually about referring back to the restaurant. The key to worthy mapping in this, in the first place, is knowing which customer needs are you targeting, and as well, which customers are you targeting. And this is the starting point. I don't know if you noticed, but this example only refers to one customer, right? And it shows the most common value stream around having a meal. But when you consider different customer segments, you might want to redesign the big picture, and you might want to add certain capabilities that will be customer specific and that they will help you to target a narrower group, right? So we need to be aware of that, because the experience that the product is associated with is never universal. Because we have different food preferences, dining habits, diets, moods, cravings, different expectations. And it's important to learn about those things, about the behaviors, the backgrounds, the jobs, the different contexts that we have, our preferences, because all of this can really influence how people make choice as to where they eat, what is important when they make an order, what and how they consume, how long would they stay and why, what other things really they might be doing while waiting for the meal, etc. And initially you might think that their experience, it mainly results from the way, from what they find on their plates, which comes from the cooking process. And maybe we can compare this to software development. But the value is realized not when the plates with the food are handed over by the chef to the waiters and later on by the waiters when they put it on the table. The value is realized when there's, it's not about the release on demand part. It's not about putting food in front of the customer. The value is happening when the customer is dining and when the dining experience is desirable. So when this happens, the opportunities for the restaurant growth are better, right? This is when we're truly enabling a business impact, because a happy customer will always come back and will be looking to get the same experience or even better experience. So that's also important from an economic point of view, from the impact point of view. And if we bring this analogy back to the IT space, BAs need to help organizations understand that, again, software is not the product. Software is only part of the solution, and it's one of the stack components. But solutions change, technologies change. What doesn't change is that product has customers. And there's always someone on the other side who's going to interact with this product. And this someone will develop a specific perception. a specific experience of that interaction with the product, right? Product is the experience. We can even put it this way. So you can optimize all the different elements of that experience to maximize the value. But how you can make this happen quickly? How is it possible without having to dedicate a lot of effort, time, and money? So the answer to this question is coming with a bit of an explosion, because it's all about experimenting. It's our human nature. It tells us to avoid uncertainty, but experimenting is about accepting the uncertainty. And product thinkers, we declare that we don't know and that we want to learn and that we constantly improve our knowledge about the product, about customers, and what kind of decisions we need to make between the business needs and the customer needs. It's okay not to know. It's okay to experiment before we start investing more. So this is how we can, again, eliminate the waste. As BAs, we are very familiar with the concept of making assumptions, right? Assumptions, they help us to describe their reality, but they are tricky because the very fact that we have named them, it doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but experimenting does. So that's one of the ways to get out of the build trap, to balance the discovery and delivery. And of course, it's important that we also support the experimenting with some research, because the research informs experimenting and the other way around. And the more research, the more in-depth understanding of the customer, the more experiments and the better direction of the research. So it really works in both ways. So how can you help as BAs here? You can take every single idea, requirement, a customer request, a ticket, maybe an item in the backlog. You can just take it and think about it as a hypothesis which you want to test. So you can experiment with the ingredients, with the spices, with various flavors, maybe restaurants space settings sometimes, or menu composition, right? So there are different things that you can try out. But remember that experimenting doesn't only go around solutions. You can also experiment about problems in order to validate if you're really trying to address the right problem. So you can make assumptions about the customer behaviors and maybe check them. You can check if what they claim to be the problem is the actual problem, because you know the sentence that the customer is always right. No, the customer always has a point, and it's your work, it's your job to get to the point. And in fact, experimentation is not just about a process of validating the assumptions, of validating certain strategies. It's more like it signifies a particular mindset. Obviously, it can come with a very certain format, with a very certain quality structure, but it's rather about contextualizing a certain problem. So you take it more to the ground, you speak the language of observable situations, and when you think this way, you become more specific. You put information in the context of the customer, of the very particular aspect of his life, and it helps you to put your high-level abstract requirements or strategies into more hands-on reality. And this is how we eliminate vague strategies, vague requirements. This is how we also can support the whole healthy backlog management, because we are very good at generating a lot of work without a tangible effect. So if you inject more experimenting as a thinking as well, you can avoid it. But what's the worst thing in experimenting? There are three things, actually. So first is doing experimenting aside of your ongoing efforts. So don't treat experiments like separate initiatives. Use them more like ways to obtain more knowledge in your ongoing efforts. And so you should be able to use this knowledge, for instance, for better design, for example, maybe for backlog refinement, etc. So that's one thing. The second thing is not really utilizing the knowledge that you get from the experiments and not embedding it into the overall decision making. Because experimenting should tell you if you need to change the direction. And learning turns into validated learning only when those strategies, when those roadmaps, when those assumptions and goals and etc., if this can be assessed through the results of the experiments. And there are certain risks related to experimenting that the BAs also should be detecting. Because the worst thing is to perform experiments that prove existing opinions or that they prove hidden beliefs, consciously or not. That's very bad. And product thinking encourages to have measurements. It encourages to have evidence, metrics, to experiment, to get real data, real validated information. But it's also very important to interpret the results of the experiments in an unbiased way. And this is something that we should also have a very sharp eye for, because cognitive biases, if we left them unchecked, they can lead to misalignment between the offerings of the products, the misalignment towards what the customer really wants, to what the business struggles with. So we should be basically aware that they can be affecting the quality of our work, of our analysis. They can lead us to wrong assumptions, to wrong decisions, and therefore they also create waste. So I'm not going to maybe go through all of them, but let me just give you some examples of what it means in practice from the product team life. So if you hear some signals, they come back from the customers that they are dissatisfied with a certain key product element. So rather than acting on the feedback, the team chooses to stay positive, and they focus only on these positive aspects that they are hearing, because they know it will be leading the product to greater churn. So you're choosing to ignore certain information because you know it's threatening your preferred way of thinking, your preferred way of doing things, maybe your preferred strategy. And it's something that you're ignoring. It's definitely an ostrich effect. Another example, maybe if you know that there is a feature that has a very low adoption, but the period when you're measuring the adoption is generally one of a lower usage, so maybe over some holiday period. So the one is you're forming like one distorted picture of how your customers really behave, because you're seeing information that is basically privileged because it's the most recent one in your eyes. So this is when we potentially see more relevant information that somehow, you know, it oversees the older or less current information. So this is a recency bias. And this is something that we should be really looking to challenge, not only in ourselves, not only in our work, but also in the ways we facilitate conversations around making decisions about interpreting experiments and including those learnings in our next phases of the work. And I mentioned that it's very important to embed the learnings into the backlog to kind of like balance product backlog to make it relevant both from the demand perspective, but also from the learning perspective. But you may not be the ones who own or manage product backlogs. Of course, depending on your setups, it might be different roles included, but you definitely should have a say in contributing to having a healthy backlog, a balanced backlog. And there is a red flag here. It's obsessing about prioritization, but not in a good way. So obsessing about prioritization, it happens when there is a mismatch between the validation rigor, which is deciding if something is the right thing to work on, versus prioritization rigor. So it's about deciding what gets worked on. Prioritization rigor is designed exclusively to temper internal agendas. So it helps people to feel confident that they are doing something, that they are on track. But prioritization rigor is when lots of work goes into identifying which ideas to work on, but also leaving very little leeway for adjustments, for improvisation, for experiments, for insights, etc. So prioritization rigor is what you can observe, for instance, when roadmaps show a list of features, not areas of focus, not outcomes that you expect from the customer side, not impact. So if you see a roadmap full of features, it's definitely around prioritization rigor. And a good way to prioritize is obviously to drop something that was initially planned in favor of something that is more important or appeared to be or showed up to be proved to be more of a higher value. And your role as a BA is to help here to weigh those different priorities, to explain to your stakeholders about the different trade-offs, because there's always a consequence of a certain choice. And you should be able to explain this choice consequence and also ensure that everybody understands that when they're saying yes to something that is coming, they have to say no to something that they planned before. And if you see a backlog that is full of the blue, this is not a balanced backlog. Those are not the user stories that describe how we want to change user behavior. Those are not the requirements that describe the impact. So look for evidence that will help to demonstrate how exactly the outcomes will be achieved and how they will be measured. Of course, there's more than one round to doing that, to achieving this level of maturity. And it's okay. It's okay to iterate. It's not expected from you that you're going to get the perfect metrics from day one. Because so does the whole treatment process look like. The doctor is looking for evidence, the evidence that helps to recommend best treatment. So the doctor collects data, performs some examinations. He's looking for data, for information of your health state. And based on these information, the doctor will be able to make a better decision and will be able to to prescribe a treatment for you. So solution to your problem. Or maybe we'll ask you to perform some additional exams, maybe to collect more evidence. So usually we don't know it right away. And after some time, if the issue is not cured, the doctor will propose another treatment, maybe another therapy, or maybe will extend the treatment period based on new evidence. So this is exactly this empirical approach based on iterations of acquiring data, where the doctor is reviewing frequently the progress towards his goal to cure a patient. And on the product level, this is exactly the same. It means iterations of acquiring product metrics. And we can't really be outcome-oriented or impact-oriented without them. But remember that like each patient, each product needs a specific diagnosis, and it's unique. So don't apply measures that somebody tells you to apply, because there are millions of metrics and only a fraction of them can really be applicable to your reality. There is no one ideal set of metrics. It's more like a menu from which you can choose to the most appropriate ones to your situation. A different picture. Remember the famous Einstein quote, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. I definitely see this should be a front maxim for BAs. And with this picture, I wanted to recall the balance between a problem and solution domain. Because as BAs, we are expected to recommend solutions. And when the solution is on the table, we feel like our job is done. But every choice, like mentioned before, it brings certain consequences and trade-offs of various kinds. So it is undoubtedly a fundamental duty of a BA to identify and describe these trade-offs and various solutions options. But that's not all, because we should also distinguish between an actual problem or an actual need or opportunity that exists versus a solution in disguise. And here I wanted to bring an excellent example from a product discovery guru, Teresa Torres. Um, this is a hypothetical situation. A customer is saying, I wish I could fast forward through commercials. So you might be tempted to capture this as an opportunity. However, this is really a solution request. This is a feature request. And the easiest way to detect it, to distinguish between an opportunity or a problem versus a solution, is to ask yourself and the team, is there more than one way to address this opportunity? So we want to understand the implied opportunity here, which is as simple as the customer doesn't really like commercials. And here we should be able to generate several options, etc. Like creating more entertaining commercials, more interesting, more fun, or maybe offering a commercial-free subscription, right? So always there needs to be certain ways to address this opportunity. So what was wrong with the other picture was that there should never be just one bulb in the end. If there is, it rather tells us a lot about the quality of our analysis. And a problem or an opportunity always should have more than one potential solution. So wrapping up, I want you to remember a few points that will help you to apply product thinking and eliminate waste, achieve shorter time to value, but also enable this customer experience that we are talking about. So steer clear of the mundane. Foster a culture of ongoing product discovery. You should be keeping pulse checking on it, let's say, on teams' understanding. Do they know who they deliver value for and why? Do they participate in discovery? You should facilitate frequent knowledge sharing, information exchange. You should also help the team to brainstorm about how might we approach certain thing before even thinking of delivering any solution. If product is an enabler for the customer journey, for the customer experience, you don't deliver solutions. Deliver experiences. This is the way to really bring business value. And be the crazy scientist. The crazier, the better. You can help to measure things, to observe things, to name them, to call out facts versus opinions. You can help to measure and validate the size and depth of the problems, but remember that you can experiment with the problems too, not only with the solutions. And the last one is take a holistic view of the products. You don't try to think of them as software only. This is how you can really create a link between the product scope, the customer experience, and the business impact. So thank you really so much for your attention. I hope you can be the early adopters of product thinking, because this is the way for you to start doing now what your customers and your business need next. Thanks a lot.
Wow,
Adrian, over to
fantastic.
you.
Fantastic! Thank you very much, Anna. What a fantastic presentation. I know I've seen it before, but I get even more when I see these things the second time around. So we'll cover as many questions as we can. So if you do have a question, do put it in the Q&A tab, and we'll cover as many as we can before the end of the session. So Anna, our first question comes from Paul, and Paul asks, what's your advice for influencing this change in organizations where the governance is heavily project oriented? and money is released to deliver a defined set of scope in a defined timescale, so 12 months plus. This is such a great question, Paul, because I suspect many of us come across this where it's like, yeah, we want to be a product organization, but we also want, a 25-year roadmap. I mean, I jest, but there's that kind of challenge. So how would you respond to that, Anna?
Oh, yeah, that's a challenge that is definitely shared across the industry and the profession. And the good news is that when I even started, thinking about what could change around it, I wasn't even so into the whole product approach there yet, but I definitely found some ways to influence my, at least at the lowest level of my influence. So the team that I was directly working with, so we were part of the development team. So that's how it started for me. I started talking more closely to my Scrum Master, to my product owner. I told them that I don't exactly agree with the way we prioritize things short term, long term. So maybe we can try to at least try out different things, let's say different ways of prioritizing. Let's say prioritization usually happens that everything is labeled, whether it's must have or should have, etc. I definitely prefer a more relatable prioritization when you compare things of their urgency, of their size, of their value, etc. So there's different techniques here, and it puts things into perspective. So this is where I started, and well, it wasn't easy at the beginning, but it did open some eyes. So I encourage you to at least trigger some conversations with the closest coworkers and see maybe how you could do it maybe on a sprint level, maybe in a quarter level, and only then, scale up.
Yeah, I in a different context, I found the same. It's almost prove it in a really small way. Like, get them to buy in a really small way, and then scale, and then scale it. So that makes a lot of sense. So excellent. Thank you very much for that question, Paul. So our next question is from Robert. And Robert asks, having a backlog suggests I can have high confidence in deciding what is most valuable to innovate next. Encouraging experimentation feels like low confidence in the value of what I'm innovating next. So Robert says he's struggling to reconcile accepting both a backlog and experimentation. What are your thoughts on that, Anna?
That's a very interesting view because I would say innovation never comes with certainty. I think it's the other way around. I think that when we innovate, we don't know what to expect. We're trying out new things, but we never get the let's say 100% level of confidence that it will pay out or it will bring us the result that we expect. So the benefit of that approach is that we're always learning something, so there is never a failure in that approach. It's just like it informs our future endeavors and our future decisions. But I wouldn't say that a backlog needs to present a certain level of certainty. I think it's not exactly about this.
Yeah, it's interesting, Anna. As you were speaking there, I was thinking about because I love that picture of the crazy scientist. And I was imagining that you think about a scientist will probably have a hypothesis and a set of experiments that they want to run. And that set of experiments is like a backlog in a way. And they might suddenly get to the second experiment and they're like, oh wow, I've had a breakthrough. I've cured this disease or whatever they're trying to do. So I don't need to look at the rest of the backlog because actually I've achieved my objective. But the backlog doesn't imply certainty. It's almost like a set of experiments, and sometimes those experiments build on each other. They're like, well, if this works, then I think this one will add to it, and I think this one will add to it. So maybe that's an analogy that fits somewhere.
Yeah, I would recommend to treat certainty as a parameter that we never consider in the analysis. It's like something that is the opposite. Like we should try to manage the uncertainty rather.
Yeah, absolutely. And be honest about it because sometimes there are methodologies which create the illusion of certainty and you can have a plan that looks very certain, but we've probably all been on those projects where it's the illusion. It's an illusion. So So we've probably got time for one or two more questions. So Tim says, great webinar, which I definitely agree with. And he goes on to say, I suspect many BAs are potential product managers. From your experience, what are the pros and cons, so advantages, disadvantages of being a product manager versus being a business analyst?
Wow, this is an amazing question because I've been exactly, let's say, in between those two roles. I'm a passionate BA, but at the same time, I find product management so interesting, and it's just different in the levels of accountability of the influence. You need to derive strategies around the product. You need to follow the market. You need to understand what's your target audience, especially in the commercial products, which is not always the case when we work in, for instance, internal IT departments. But on the other hand, it sometimes depends on the setup of the business versus ID relationship, because there are always, nuances between the companies. And product management, if you really have the full end-to-end responsibility for how you ship the product, how you go to the market, how you create the strategy, and how you really monitor the product lifecycle, this is brilliant. This is something I would love to do, but it's not always possible because you depend maybe on your business counterpart product manager who actually feeds you with the strategies that you need to execute. So it's not always a perfect situation. But as a VA though, it's like you're supporting the PM. You're not maybe you're not responsible in a way for a product, but on the other hand, you so are responsible because you connect the worlds of the business and the customer. And that's something that PMs might not have the full visibility at. So I guess it's a struggle. I can't
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah. When I saw, and again, I agree, Tim. Tim, this is a great question. When I saw Tim's question pop up, I'm like, you could write a book about this. Like
Yeah.
this is a whole evolving area. So I think that's great that you've come up with that answer there. Well, fantastic. Well, I think we're just about to hit the end. If you're tuned in live, do stay on the line till the very end. There's a few announcements and other free things that I want to make you aware of. But Anna, I'm absolutely certain that people wanting who have watched the webinar will want to stay in touch with you. What is the best way if people have questions, if they want to connect with you? Should they connect with you on LinkedIn or how's best?
Yeah, I'm definitely open. So send me any private message you want on LinkedIn. I'm always responsive, and I'd like to connect with you and also learn about your perspectives, how mature product approach is in your organization. So share your insights, share your problems, share your questions, and I'm happy to connect with you.
Anna, I just wanted to say thank you once again for such a fantastic presentation. Thank you to everyone who has attended live. The recording will be available in about 24 to 48 hours. Do pass it on so other people can see Anna's presentation as well. But thanks everyone, and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.